africansnakebiteinstitute.com. So that's just a very quick introduction. My interest is not just in snakes. I work on reptiles in general. Most of my field research is done with a very good friend of mine, Professor Aaron Bauer from Villanova University in Pennsylvania. So we've been working together for about 15 years. And yes, we've done a tremendous amount of field work. And this has resulted in the description of a whole bunch of new species and just broadening our knowledge of these various reptiles.
Awesome. So can you tell us where you are from and a little bit about the Snakebite Institute?
Okay, so I grew up in Durban, which is a coastal town, but for several years now I've been living in Pretoria, just north of Johannesburg, so right in the middle of South Africa. As far as the African Snakebite Institute goes, it's an organization that I started about 10 years ago. And as the name says, we largely concern ourselves with snakes and snakebite. And we do a lot of different things. So one of the things that we do is we do a lot of training in snake awareness. We do a lot of training in first aid for snakebite. I do a lot of lecturing for medical doctors on how to treat snakebite patients. And this training is not just done in South Africa, we work all over Africa. So we work in about 19 African countries. And then we have a very strong educational aspect of African Snakebite Institute. So we've developed snake profiles, we've developed a variety of snake posters. These are all free downloads from our website. We've developed a phenomenal app called ASI Snakes. And this app it's one of the top 10 reference apps in Africa. It's had over 100,000 downloads and it's a free app. You guys can download it. Just go to your store and you just punch in ASI Snakes, 2 words. And the app has a lot of different features. We have, for instance, first aid for snakebite on the feature. We have the medical treatment of snakebite on the app. We have a feature called local snakes. So if you're in a specific town, you just press on local snakes and the app shows you what snakes occur in that area. We have hospitals loaded up. So if you need to get to a hospital, you can use the app to navigate to the nearest hospital. We have profiles. So if you think you've seen a specific type of snake, you can just call up the profile and it shows you 4 color photographs, a distribution map and some information about it. And then a very popular feature of the app is that we do snake, spider, and scorpion identification. So if you come across any snake, spider, or scorpion, you're not quite sure what it is, you take your app, take the photograph, it gets sent straight through to us. We can see where you sent it from. It's all geocached. And then we do those identifications. So we do probably anything from 40 to 150 identifications a day. So that's in a bit of a nutshell.
Very interesting. Our students and our teachers, we have 4 teachers on here with us, Mr. Kiger, Miss White, Miss Harmon, and Miss Avery, and all their students are joining us. And they have taken the time to create some questions for you. So I was going to open the floor for our students or our teachers to ask you some questions. They've been excited to learn about snake education from you. So
Excellent.
At this point, I'm just going to let some students or teachers unmute themselves and open the floor to questions if you're okay with that.
Of course, no problem.
Well, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Miss Harmon. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. My
pleasure.
question is, what is the most dangerous snake in Southern Africa?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it depends on how you define dangerous. So usually the first question people ask us is, what is the most venomous? And that is a difficult question to answer because the only way you can measure venom is an archaic test called an LD50. And an LD50 is the amount of venom that you need to kill 50 out of 100 laboratory mice in 24 hours. So it's a standard test that was done very much in the past. Nowadays, we don't really do LD50s that much. The problem with an LD50 is it gives you a measure of the effect of the venom on a mouse, and it gives you no measure of how that venom reacts on humans. So if we look at the danger of snakes in South Africa, our snakebite deaths are largely only 2 snakes. We have about 10 to 12 snakebite deaths a year in South Africa, and those deaths are usually from bites inflicted by the black mamba or the Cape cobra. And the reason for that is that these snakes have a neurotoxic venom that stops your breathing. And when your breathing stops, you die. So these snakes have these really potent venoms. But 10 to 12 deaths a year. If we look at snakebite morbidity, we have 2 snakes here, the puff adder and the Mozambique spinning cobra, and they send far more people to hospital. So they don't really cause fatalities, but their venoms are cytotoxic or cell destroying, and they do a lot of damage. So a lot of people need multiple operations. So puff adder and spinning cobra are probably our 2 most dangerous snakes, and the black mamba and the Cape cobra are deadliest snakes. Right, who's next? Elizabeth, did that answer your question?
Yes, that did. Thank you so much. I have a follow-up question though.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, a couple maybe. How long have you been in institution, and have you seen a decrease in the number of hospitalizations or the numbers of deaths from when you first started to now?
So I've been around, I've been working with snakes all my life. So I've been quite involved in the whole local snakebite scene. But the Institute has been running for 10 years, and it's very difficult to collect good data on snakebite incidences and on fatalities, because in very few countries is snakebite a notifiable disease. So any hospital that has a snakebite victim doesn't have to report it to anyone. So we find that worldwide that it's difficult to get statistics. Over the last 10 years, we probably have, there hasn't been a massive changes. We have just under 4,000 snake bites a year. About 800 of those people end up in hospital. About 10% of them need and receive antivenom. The majority of them don't. And then our deaths on average is around 10 to 12 a year. So it's been fairly consistent with a bit of variation, but it's been fairly consistent over the last 10 years.
So what do you do if you are bitten by a venomous snake?
You know, the best advice that we give people, and I think this applies worldwide, there's 2 things that you do. First of all, don't go into Facebook. Forget about social media. The second thing is you get to the nearest hospital. Very, very important, because what you find in South Africa, the cytotoxic venoms, the puff adders and the spinning cobras and a whole variety of other snakes, there's nothing that you can really do. You're not going to die quickly from those bites, not in 6 or 10 or 12 hours. But if you need antivenom, the antivenom can reduce the amount of tissue damage. And you have the same in the USA with a lot of rattlesnake bites. So the sooner you can get to a hospital and the sooner you can get the correct treatment, the less the tissue damage. So even in the USA, it's very, very important if you have a snake bite, make sure you're away from the snake. You don't want a second bite. If you can, get a photograph of the snake with your cell phone, but not if it's going to endanger you. You don't want a second bite. And then get to a hospital and let the doctors take care of you. So that's very, very important. If you download the app ASI Snakes, you'll see that I have a lot to say there about first aid, the pros and the cons of first aid, what you can do, what you shouldn't do. But if you get to a hospital, you're halfway there. You've just about won the battle.
We have a question in the chat. Our director, Mr. Moore, has joined us, and yes. He asked, what makes you so passionate about snake bites? Have you had someone close to you bitten before?
Well, it hasn't really been a personal thing. I think, first of all, my passion for reptiles started as a youngster. I caught my first snake at the age of 5 or 6. And what I found fascinating about them, in addition to them being very secretive, is that there wasn't much known about them. There weren't a lot of books available. It was difficult to learn a lot about snakes. And if you ask people about snakes, you invariably got misinformation. There are so many myths and superstitions about snakes chasing people and attacking people and all that sort of stuff. The same sort of applies to reptiles in general and amphibians. There wasn't a lot of knowledge available. So that intrigued me. And even to this day, there are a lot of very basic questions about snakes that we don't have answers for. So I can't tell you exactly where Cape cobras usually lay their eggs because we have no idea. It's underground somewhere, but I don't know anyone that's ever found their eggs underground. So to some degree, we had the same with snakebite. We had a lot of poor knowledge about first aid. A lot of the older books had incorrect first aid. A lot of these first aid measures did far more damage than good. And the same with snakebite in a hospital. So what we found as an institute is that people would go to a hospital and they would often get the wrong treatment from a medical doctor. And it's quite understandable because most medical doctors in their entire career won't see a single snake bite. It's just not a common thing. Unless you're in a high risk area and you're working in a trauma unit, you don't see snake bites. So now suddenly, 30 years after studying, a doctor has a snake bite victim. And now he must try and remember what he was taught 30 years ago. So we've been going to a lot of trouble educating doctors, sharing information, speaking at various medical symposia. I was supposed to speak in Texas this year, but then COVID stopped that. But I speak in the Netherlands, and I speak in Spain, and I speak in Kenya, and there we share ideas with like-minded people, and we discuss first aid, and we discuss the medical treatment, and we look at the efficiency of different antivenoms, and we share this knowledge. So I think a large part of my interest in snakebite is just sharing the knowledge, educating more people, and making sure that victims get the right treatment.
We have a question kind of piggybacking on what you just said about, getting incorrect information and maybe not being treated correctly. You think about what you see in movies and on TV shows, and we have a student, Mark. I'm sure you can guess what he's asking. Is it okay, or is it a solution to suck the poison out once you get bit by a venomous snake?
Yes, that is a total illusion, and especially so in the USA. There are two things that you don't do. If you have a snakebite victim, cutting and sucking does not work. So this has been tested medically. Years back, they tested it still when they were doing tests on animals. They would inject venom into an animal, then apply suction, and then measure the amount of venom that was extracted, and it's negligible. It's probably less than 2% of the venom. So venom sticks. When venom goes into you, it spreads through the lymphatics very quickly. So cutting and sucking does not work. And then the second thing is stay away from arterial tourniquets. So again, in the old movies, we'd see the guy binds up his arm, cuts off the blood circulation. If you have a rattlesnake bite or a copperhead bite and you have a lot of swelling and you have tissue damage and you put an arterial tourniquet on, you're going to do far more damage. Please don't do that. Rather get to a hospital.
It's great information. Thank you so much. We have a question from our science teacher, Mr. Kiger.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm curious, like how and when did we learn to milk the venom from snakes to make an antidote? How did we figure that out, or how did that come about?
Yeah, well, it was not unlike a lot of other antidotes where they made use of hyperimmunization in animals. So in South Africa, our first antivenoms came around at about the turn of the century in 1900, 1901. We already started making our first antivenoms and using them. So South Africa has been around for about 120 years that we've been using antivenoms. USA, I'm not exactly sure, but I would guess that you've had the technology a lot longer than us. So just on this, the subject of hyperimmunization, I'm going to have a quick drink of water. The way we make antivenom is in South Africa we use horses. We use horses because they're large, they have a lot of blood, and they're fairly easy to manage. In the USA, a lot of the antivenoms are made using sheep. So you hyperimmunize the horse over about a 9-month period by starting to inject it with very small quantities of snake venom. Tiny, tiny bits, not enough to harm the animal. Little bits of it. As you inject the horse, it starts producing antibodies. It starts building up a resistance. You increase that and you increase that and you increase the amounts of venom. You increase that over about 9 months. And then after 9 months, the sheep is hyperimmunized. So you can give that animal venom. It does absolutely nothing to them. So with horses, every 2 months, we will then drain blood from the horse. We'll take maybe 9 or 10 liters at a time, separate the red and white blood cells, remove the serum, and then put the blood back into the horse. And that serum then goes through various stages of purification, and that's the antivenom. So what you're in fact getting when you're bitten by a snake, if you get antivenom, you're being injected with horse serum. And that horse serum finds the venom in you and neutralizes it. And it works very, very well. The problem with antivenom, and specifically in South Africa, is that like any drug, it has side effects. So the antivenom tends to cause quite a lot of allergic reactions, and some of those patients can go into anaphylaxis. And that's life-threatening. So because of these side effects, we only administer antivenom in a hospital environment. You can't just do it at home. You can't do it in the local doctor's consulting rooms. If you have a snake bite, the victim needs to get to a hospital.
We also have a question from Corey. Corey, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
What do you usually do in your free time?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Corey.
He was asking what you do in your free time.
Yeah, I see there's another question up here from Kenzie saying, what is a typical working day? So I'm going to answer both of those questions. So free time, I do a lot of photography. So I travel all over Africa photographing reptiles specifically. I'm an outdoors person. I do a lot of fly fishing. In fact, this morning we went fly fishing for a while. I travel extensively. I have 2 dear friends in the USA. The one, Paul Muller, was the herpetologist with Florida Fish and Game. He's in Gainesville. He's now retired. So I go and spend time with him. We go up to the Panhandle looking for frogs and looking for snakes all over the place. And then my other good friend was the herpetologist with Arizona Fish and Game, and he's based out in Phoenix. So I visit him and we go fly fishing and we go looking for reptiles and we do photography. And the 3 of us travel to Mexico. We go to Alamos and places like that. So yes, I spend a lot of my time outdoors. I spend a lot of my time writing books. I've just rewritten one of my books now, The Complete Guide to Snakes. I wrote that 14 years ago. So I've done a major revision of that and updated it. And then with my colleague, Luke Kemp, I'm busy doing a book, or we are busy doing a book on the reptiles and amphibians of Southern Africa. So we're doing one book that covers 670 species of reptiles and amphibians in Southern Africa. So that's my free time. Obviously a lot of family time as well. We have 2 young daughters, so we get out as much as we can. Work-wise, I don't have a typical day. At the moment, yesterday I spent most of my day working on the new book. A few days back we did some training. So we do both public and we do corporate training courses. We do snake awareness, where we teach people about the behavior and habits of snakes. We talk about the myths and superstition. We train them on the first aid, and then we also discuss the medical treatment of snakebite. And we also train people to how to catch venomous snakes using the correct tools. Because in South Africa, people will often, depending on where you live, find venomous snakes in their garden or in their house. So we train people to remove those snakes, and we teach them how to do it safely and humanely and with the right equipment. And they would then catch that snake in a garden and go and relocate it elsewhere. And we have similar training that we do for corporate clients, because our corporate clients are often in sort of wild areas, mines, construction companies, drilling sites, waterworks, and they encounter a lot of snakes. And they have environmental policies. They don't permit anyone to kill a snake. So we train our people there to catch snakes and remove them. So between training and writing, and we have a very strong social presence. We have a Facebook page called Snakes of Southern Africa with close on 180,000 people on it. So we're always giving that attention. We develop a lot of material for the social media. So it's always, writing little bits and pieces about snakes and behavior and posting photographs. So we're busy. We're busy most days and most nights. We have a lot to do.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. We have you for about 8 more minutes. So let's see what we can get in. I asked, have you ever visited Arkansas? You said you had come to Arizona. Have you ever visited Little Rock?
I've been to over 30 states, but I know I have not yet.
Well, you'll have to put it on your to-do list.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful here.
Absolutely.
Come see our water moccasins in Copperhead.
Yeah, I've caught a lot of those in Georgia and up in Florida, Louisiana, and quite a bit of field work there.
Hey, there was a giant alligator found in Pine Bluff yesterday, walking down the road.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah.
Not typical.
Not typical here, right?
Not bad.
It's becoming more typical.
Yes.
We have a question that says, is there anything we can do about a snake bite if we can't get to a hospital immediately? Like if the bite occurred while hiking?
There isn't much that you can do, and you've got to be careful because a lot of the advice that you get and the little devices you see on the internet do not work. And I often say to people that many snake bites are a little bit like having a burst appendix. If you're far away from a hospital and you have a burst appendix, you need to get to a hospital. That's all you can do. Nothing else you can do. And that's pretty much the same with the majority of snake bites. And in the USA, you don't have a lot of bites that are life-threatening in the short term. So get to a hospital. Even if you're far away, get to a hospital. All you need to do.
And Ms. Emery asks, what's your favorite reptile and why?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people ask me that, and it's it's difficult as a scientist because we have a scientific interest in animals. I don't, for instance, give snakes names. I have a different type of interest in them. So I think one of my favorite snakes, without doubt, is the green mamba. It's a emerald green snake. It lives up in trees. It's very gracious the way it moves. It's fairly rare where it is found. So yeah, when we're done, just Google green mamba and have a look at one. They really are pretty snakes.
Couple more questions. Let's see. What kind of training would we need to become a herpetologist? Yeah,
that's a pretty good question. So first of all, when you're at school, you need good math marks. Math marks they're important. One of the most important things in life. So always remember that. Your route would usually be to do a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Science degree, perhaps then do honors after that. When you get to a master's program, you can start specializing in reptiles, and you have excellent universities in the USA. My good friend, Professor Aaron Bauer, has one of the best herpetological labs. He's at Villanova University. So then you do your master's, then ideally, if you still have the energy, you do a PhD in herpetology. And only then are you at the beginning. Then you can start, and there are a lot of opportunities. There are opportunities in research. There are opportunities in lecturing. So yeah, there's a lot of people who work at various museums as museum curators, doing taxonomical work or doing phylogenies, or various other research on various forms of reptile behavior. But that's the route that you need to go.
Ethan's asking, what is the most beautiful snake you have ever seen?
Yeah, no, again, a tough question because there are just incredible reptiles all over the world. Probably The emerald tree boas from South America. They're really, really colorful, green with yellow dots all over them, and they sort of hang over branches. So I'd probably go with an emerald tree boa.
Jarrett asked a question. Jarrett, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, I want to know how many times you can get an antivenom before it's just dangerous.
So antivenom, like any drug, as I mentioned, is dangerous. So you can have a snake bite and receive antivenom and hopefully recover fully. And let's assume you have another snake bite later. You can have antivenom again. And then one of two things might happen. You might have no adverse reaction, or you might have a severe adverse reaction. That is manageable. As long as you're in a hospital and you have a competent medical team, they can manage the adverse reactions, and that would be anaphylaxis. What we have found is that the more a patient receives the same antivenom, the less effective the antivenom becomes. So it might be necessary to up the dosages. So in South Africa, if you have a black mamba bite, you're going to need 10 to 12 vials of polyvalent antivenom. That's about 100 to 120 milliliters. The next time around, you might need 15 vials or 18 vials. So it's not a good idea to get bitten regularly.
Is it expensive, the antivenom?
Not near as expensive as the USA. We pay about, for us, it's expensive. An average snake bite in South Africa, if you get bitten by a snake and you end up in a hospital and you need antivenom and you spend a bit of time in high care, you're probably looking at about $8,000 to $10,000 per treatment. In the USA, you can look at 10 times that amount for one treatment. It's very, very expensive in the USA.
I had a question.
I'm listening.
Okay, have you ever ran into a West African carpet viper?
Yes, I've actually worked with them, and the carpet vipers are a very big problem. They're a small snake. They're quite feisty. They're locally abundant. And you'll remember that I said that we have about 10 to 12 snakebite deaths a year in South Africa. In North and West Africa, in the Sahel district, we have about 20,000 deaths a year, and they are largely caused by carpet vipers. They really are bad news. And these deaths are because of a lack of medical facilities and a lack of antivenom. So a lot of the people up in North Africa and West Africa will go to traditional healers who don't have antivenom, and there is no other treatment for snake bite other than antivenom. If you have a severe bite, severe envenomation, you need antivenom. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Okay. And I have one more question.
Sure.
So, like, if you encounter a snake, like any kind of snake, like, what is the best way to, like, how do I say this?
That's an easy question.
Like, avoid it. Best way to avoid it.
If you come across a snake in any situation, indoors or outdoors, what you want to do is you want to back off 5 paces immediately. And if you back off 5 paces, you are absolutely safe and you cannot get bitten in any situation. You come across a rattlesnake, you come across a black mamba here in Africa, the moment you're close to that snake, any cobra, you back off 5 paces and you are absolutely safe. No snake will go from 5 paces away and approach you and attack and bite you. No chance. Okay. That's all you need, 5 paces, nothing else.
Yeah, because I used to study snakes and spiders when I was little. So, like, I had a couple of questions. Like, good. I don't know what it was, but, like, I was really interested in it.
And you still study them?
I mean, sometimes, not as recent, but, like, I, like, get curious sometimes. That's what makes me want to do my research and discover more.
Yeah, good. And if you have a real interest in reptiles, do yourself a favor and get yourself a decent book on the snakes or lizards or frogs or whatever you're interested in. Be very careful of Google, because anyone can put any junk on Google.
Yeah,
so you can read stuff on Google and it's a load of rubbish. Get yourself books And the nice thing about books is if I write a book and it gets published, it gets reviewed. So my peers all have a look at it and they write reviews. And if I write incorrect information, I get bad reviews. So we make sure when we write books, we put the right information in there. They're thoroughly researched. Even before my book goes to the publishers, I'll send it to 3 or 4 of my friends who are good herpetologists, and they will scrutinize it. And they'll say to me, listen, you said this or that, that's not right. Correct this, correct that. So by the time it gets onto the shelves, we give you facts. We don't give you incorrect information.
Gotcha.
Right, I see we have a few more questions here. What is the most intimidating snake you've ever ran into? I've worked with snakes. They don't really intimidate me, but I have worked with 14, 15-foot king cobras in Asia. They're a handful. I think our black mamba is undoubtedly at close to 12, 13 feet. It's one of the most dangerous snakes in the world. So yeah, they're quite tough to deal with, but they don't really intimidate me. The biggest reptile that I've come by, I've seen in captivity in Florida with my good friend Tom Crutchfield. He's had reticulated pythons in captivity that were about 20 feet long. I worked with crocodilians for 8 years. So I've seen saltwater crocodiles of 17 and a half feet. So yes, I've seen some really big reptiles in my time. Of course, I must always get this question. How many times have you been bitten? So in the last 40 years, I've had one venomous snake bite that I ended up in hospital for a few days. I was bitten in the foot by a puff adder, and I didn't need anti-venom. I recovered very, very well. So I've been rather careful and fortunate in that I haven't had a bunch of bad snake bites in my life. I don't think you need to be bitten to be a good herpetologist. Not necessary.
I would argue that a good herpetologist would not get bitten.
Yep, I agree. But you know, like anything, if you're an electrician and you work with power, and you've been working as an electrician for the last 20 years, find me one that's never been shocked. That person doesn't exist. These things happen. But yes, I fully agree. A good herpetologist does not need to be bitten.
Mr. Murray, thank you so much for joining us. Our students have been excited about this. This is one of the most engaged Zooms that I have seen them on. So, you know, just like I think it was Nick saying that he wants to study spiders and reptiles, you've helped create and instill that in our students as well. I would like to, is there any other questions? I think just to close this out, he's gone 5 minutes over his time with us, and we don't want to take too much of his time, but we appreciate it. Would anybody else like to ask?
I have time. I see there's a question, what snake is the least venomous? There's lots of snakes. You probably find that nearly half of our snakes in South Africa have no venom whatsoever. So these snakes have teeth. They need teeth. They catch their food with it, but they are constrictors largely, and they have no venom whatsoever. We even have egg eaters that virtually don't have teeth because they eat bird eggs only. So we have snakes that can't even bite you if they wanted to. Another question, do I enjoy my job? Rudely so. I often say to people that the way I live should be illegal. I have so much fun. Right, any other questions, guys? There's a question here. It's asking if we can see a snake. Let me just quickly, Bianca, can you grab us one of the egg eaters, please? We're just going to grab an egg eater to show you a snake. As I mentioned, egg eaters don't have teeth. They eat bird eggs only, and they're very well adapted. They swallow the entire egg whole into the neck region, and then they have bones in the vertebrae that they use to crack the eggshell. They squeeze it, swallow the contents, and then they spit the shell out. And they obviously use their forked tongues and their Jacobson organ in the mouth to locate the eggs. So if there's an egg eater on the ground and there's a tree here with a bird's nest in it, that snake can smell those eggs and knows exactly where to find them. If you have rodents in your garden, snakes can smell them. If you have frogs in your garden, snakes can smell them. And that's why they come into your property. They come looking for that food. So the question here is it true that any snake could swallow a human whole? It very rarely happens. But in Southeast Asia, where you have 20-foot reticulated pythons, yes, the people there are quite, a lot of the people in Southeast Asia are small people. So maybe once or twice a year, someone might get killed and swallowed. In Africa, or let me say in South Africa, it's just about unheard of. In the last 100 years, we've had one single death by python in South Africa. So it's very rare for that to happen. So here I have a little egg eater. As I said, this is a completely harmless snake. They can't bite even if they wanted to. And you'll see the tongue flickering all the time. Snakes' tongues are very, very important because they have these organs in the roof of their mouth that does a chemical analysis of what the tongue picks up. So the tongue picks up particles, goes into the roof of the mouth, and they can work out what's in the area. So it's they don't smell like us. It's more chemical sensing than smelling in the conventional way. Right. Any last questions, guys? I still have time. Marla, anything else?
I mean, we could sit here all day and ask questions. I see even our other people in Miss Martin's office leaning in to watch. So I see our nurse Miller right there. She's joining us. So I know we could ask questions all day, and yes, the snake's very cute. We really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun, very educational and engaging for our students. I think Mr. Moore, if you wanted to just add something, and we'll let you go. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such an honor. And of course, we are going to go and buy one of your books.
Excellent. They're available as ebooks. They're on Amazon. Well, thank you for the invite, and I look forward to a future Zoom meeting. You're very welcome to contact me anytime. And for the students, remember those math marks. Very important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Mr. Moore, if you want to close us out as well. Mr. Moore, we can't hear you. I'm not sure. You're not muted.
There we go.
There we go.
I can hear.
I just want to say thank you and mirror what you said about the math marks. We're all math people in this group right here, and science people. So this was absolutely amazing. And from coming all the way from the other side of the world, it's just, I can't tell you thank you enough from the Eastham Downtown Junior High's campus. Like you have just shed a light on our students that they may never have seen. And thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And it's been a pleasure to spend our morning with you. So
it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again. Everybody say bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
And you. Thanks. Bye.